Hey Roosters, and welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about something that I saw floating around a bit. Now I know this isn't really a big topic or anything like that, but it's something I wanted to talk about anyway. Without further ado, let's dig in. I think it'll make sense as we go along. FFG revealed a couple weeks ago that they were going to be making a new trading card game, a Star Wars trading card game. I know a lot of people are excited, and a lot of people are actually a little bit optimistic. There are, of course, the few people who are pessimistic about the whole situation, and of course, to each their own. Nobody has to be excited just because they're making a new Star Wars card game. You don't have to believe that it's going to be great. But for those who are really excited and can't wait to get their hands on some of the cards and play and test it out and all these things, then, I think this is a really good thing. Obviously, we hadn't had a Star Wars card game for a couple of years now. 1 or 2 or 3, maybe even 4, actually. Like a couple of years, 3 years or so now, since Star Wars Destiny ended, and a lot of people are really hoping that this one is going to replace the card game for them and fill that slot that they wanted a Star Wars card game. Now, of course, I want to wait to make this video because I wanted to see a little bit about the cards. When they first revealed that the Star Wars trading card game, Star Wars Unlimited, was going to be a thing, they made some claims that made me a little bit on edge. So the first game was that the main claim that I'm looking at here is the claim that they said there was going to be no gimmicks, it was just going to be a straightforward card game. Now, to me, that sounded to me like it was going to be like Magic the Gathering, or it was going to be something like Duel Masters, Duel Masters. Because when you say a straightforward card game, the only thing I can assume is that you mean one of the most popular and well-designed card games, concept-wise, mechanic-wise, Duel Masters, or the original card game, Magic the Gathering. So those two sort of archetypes of card game is what I usually think. And I wasn't necessarily wrong, but I was pleasantly surprised by the different choices that we already know that they've made when designing this card game. But obviously, after seeing the cards and seeing the design and hearing these things, it got an idea into my mind, and maybe a couple other people out there as well. Are card games losing their creativity in their designs? Okay, so why do I ask this question? I mean, it's not really a smart question to ask, but there is a little bit of interesting ideas going behind this inquiry. So the first one is, if you look at the history of Star Wars card games, now anybody who's played a lot of the past Star Wars card games, or even Star Wars tabletop games in general, they're very rich in the sense that the designers aren't really afraid of making crazy design choices if they think it will in the end create a good card game. So when the original Star Wars CCG was very wacky, very crazy. It has very many things that you wouldn't really expect to see in modern card games. Then, of course, after that, you have the Star Wars TCG, which again was very weird, very different, nothing you would see normally. And there's there has been many card games throughout the years. There's been the Star Wars LCG, again, very different from what you would see from a card game. There was a Star Wars Destiny TCG, which again was very crazy. And so when they say no gimmicks, that means that they're going to remove it seemed to me that all that stuff, all that wacky, crazy design spaces were not going to be here. In a sense, they're not. But even if they're not going to go too crazy with the mechanics, if the mechanics are going to be as simple as we assume, is that really a bad thing? I don't think so. You have to understand that when those older card games were coming out, it was about a time where people weren't really sure what worked, what didn't, how to get people excited, and how to make a card game that would be really fun. Obviously, the idea of a card game was so new, even back during the original Star Wars CCG, that to say what would make a good card game and a safe card game choice was important, and it was, of course, not really that well known. The thing about it all is that when we're talking about licensed card games like this Star Wars card game is, a lot of card games are, in their essence, a big financial investment by whatever company or single person is investing and trying to create a card game that can be mass-produced and shipped off to become one of the bigger card games in the marketplace. Why is this important? Because anything that would reduce the chance of this card game becoming a success could greatly impact the decision when making the card game. Now, with licensed card games, it's even more so, because a lot of these companies have to pay for the license as well as the card game itself. So what is all of this? What does all of this mean? It means that card game designers, especially for licensed card games, are trying to find the way to make the most money and make the most people happy as possible so they can make a good profit and make a good return. Because if a card game fails and decides to go under and it sort of flops, then that can mean huge financial blows for the company, because again, most of the card game companies aren't really that big to begin with. Being in mind, card games aren't really losing creativity if you think about it in that sense, but rather they're becoming more streamlined. Companies are understanding more and more what makes a good game, and they're also understanding more and more what people want to see from a game. And so what they're going to do now is that they're going to decide to make the game as easy to pick up and easy to play as possible. Easy to spend, easy to buy, easy to get into, and easy to get out of, easy to trade, easier to do all these things, host tournaments, whatever you want to do with a card game. They're trying to make sure that as many people as possible can possibly get this done. And it just so happens that now people are understanding more and more what makes that more likely. Other card games coming out at this certain time also have been doing the same thing, which is sort of where this idea also comes from, such as the Digimon card game or the Dragon Ball Super trading card game. Both games, in my opinion, are decently well designed, but the thing is that compared to their old Digimon card game predecessors or the old Dragon Ball card game that was out before the Dragon Ball Super card game that people really loved and believed that was designed very fun and very thematic, these newer games are much more streamlined than those older games were. So now that means that it's going to be a little more simple, a little more formulaic. It's going to conform a little bit more to a certain rigid code that they're trying to go with to keep the game as popular as possible than these older games, which may have took a little more what you may even call risks in hopes of creating a game that people love and that is unique and is far different. The whole thing about card games losing creativity loses even more validity when you look at the many indie card games and card game companies that are creating card games on their own. Obviously, popular examples would be like Flesh and Blood or Ashes Reborn. It's card games like these that are hosted by some way smaller developers, not I wouldn't say really like independent, but smaller companies that are coming together and saying, okay, we're going to make a card game. This is not licensed, this is our own IP. We invented this. We want to put it out there and we want to do it the way we want to get it done. They are not to say that they're not streamlining or very fine-tuning the design of their card game, but rather they are really more focusing on what they imagine their card game would be like rather than what would serve the IP card game the best, if that makes any sense. Why am I saying this is because card games that are also being developed by other indie developers have a wide variety of different things, a bunch of homemade trading card games or different card games that are coming out on Kickstarter and all these things. These people either A, don't have really the financial drawback of creating a card game, so that means they'll make bigger leaps and bigger decision choices, or again, they are not working for a big company and so they have more freedom of control to say, this is what I want to design in my card game. All of this to say, to bring it back around to the original point of the Star Wars trading card game, Star Wars Unlimited by FFG, the game isn't really that formulaic. From what we've seen of the card game, it seems to be very unique from other card games, though it does take certain elements from other card games, again, to streamline the design and do what they believe will work. Now, in a lot of card games either have like duelist mechanics where you pick one character and you build a deck of actions and attacks around that character. That is becoming more popular now in recent years. But even such other design card games like Magic the Gathering, or Yu-Gi-Oh, you have a deck full of characters that you play onto the field, and you sort of like have an army of characters as cards in the attack. A lot of games nowadays are realizing that you can mix those two aspects, the Versus and 2 TCG, Dragon Ball Super card game, the One Piece card game, and now this Star Wars card game are using this idea of leaders or singular characters who you build your deck around, but you also put characters in your deck. This is a very smart design choice, and it's very simple, and it's low risk because it allows you to pick a character you really love, and it'll be the front of your deck. And then it also allows you to have booster packs with a bunch of different characters in it, and you don't have to be afraid of reusing the same character every time, the same main character, to keep people interested. And you also don't have to be afraid of putting wackier characters in there and stuff like that. There's a lot more you can talk about this design choice, the simple idea of leaders and then units in your deck. But it's really smart, it's really streamlined, and it makes more sense why more and more card games are probably going to start going with this simple idea. But that's not really all there is to what makes this card game more unique from other card games out there. The two battle arenas between unit and space, or ground and space, is something that we've seen in previous card games that they're bringing back here to add more thematic elements to Star Wars. Because as you know, most Star Wars, there's a battle in land, there's a battle in space, maybe one or the other, both. We don't really know how much this is going to take place or how much this is going to impact the gameplay and really what this is going to mean. The fact that some units go in one area and others in the different arena. Another design mechanic that we heard about are bases, though I'm not sure we've seen any cards or any examples of a base in the card game. It seems to be another aspect that is going to symbolize more Star Wars lore and flavor, such as there's a lot of bases that are being attacked and defended in Star Wars, like the base on Endor, or even the Death Star might end up becoming a base or something along these lines, so you can understand how that can add more theme and more flavor to the IP and to the card game. In summary, I think card games are streamlining. They're not losing creativity per se, but they're actually becoming more and more consistently creative. And that means that card games are, yes, they're going to start, some design aspects are going to be understood to be not that great. They're going to be removed. Some aspects are being decided to be a waste of time in a sense, even if they can work. So developers don't really need to make them work. They need to do what can work, they know will work. And this is something that you just have to accept as part of life. When the first guns started coming out, there was a bunch of different wacky designs and stuff like that. Different cars and it goes crazy because nobody really knows exactly what is time efficient, or rather, they just want to see what they can do to make themselves unique. And sometimes it backfires horribly. Now we're getting to the stage of card games where people are truly starting to understand what people want to buy, what people want to play, what design mechanics work, what design mechanics are going to work more likely or more often than other design mechanics aren't. So I do believe this new card game is going to be a lot more streamlined than the older card games. It's going to be less creative, we don't know. We still have to see it come out. We still have to decide whether or not this card game has life and a story to tell within its game and within its community that it's trying to build, or is it just going to be another cash grab? I don't think it's going to be a cash grab. I think there's going to be a certain amount of love put into this game, and I'm excited to see how it all shakes down. But of course, we can't really know until it happens. Can't wait to 2024, I believe, is when the card game's going to come out, and get my hands on some. I do get my hands on these cards. I can't wait to tell you guys whether or not it's creative or whether or not it brings more and enriches the Star Wars experience. Hope you guys can join me then. Hope you guys stay tuned. And if you're not interested in finding out more about Star Wars Unlimited, as I do and as we do here at the Roost, then hopefully you stick around. We got other forms of content coming as well.